Welcome back to Broadcasting Seeds, the show where we shine a flashlight into the shadows of the unknown, planting just enough questions to make you reconsider your comfortable little corner of reality. I'm your host, Bennett Tanton, and today we're stepping straight into the dark, eerie woods of the Winter Solstice, a time steeped in ancient legend, biblical significance, and apparently some truly unsettling modern experiences. So picture this, the longest night of the year, a cosmic reset button celebrated for centuries with rituals, bonfires, and the occasional spooky story whispered by firelight. But what if those stories weren't just tales? What if the solstice actually brings something closer? Something that might mimic your voice, follow your footsteps, or watch from just beyond the edge of the tree line. That's exactly what happened to my daughter and her friend a few nights ago. Out there in our suburban neighborhood, on solstice night, they encountered something or someone that seemed more than just the rustling of leaves or the creak of a branch. Something mimicking them, tracking them. And trust me, as a Marine and Army vet, I've got a pretty good radar for when something isn't adding up. Today, we're diving headfirst into this mystery, from the ancient significance of the winter solstice to theories about mimicry in the supernatural. We're peeling back the layers of one of the strangest nights of the year. And yes, we'll be connecting it to the bigger picture. Biblical connections, cryptids, government cover-ups, you name it. Because let's face it, when it comes to the unexplained, nothing exists in a vacuum. So buckle up, folks. Whether you're a die-hard skeptic or someone who keeps holy water in your glove box, this episode has something for you. But fair warning, by the end, you might just be leaving the lights on a little longer tonight. Now, let's start unpacking the mysteries of the winter solstice. What is it about this night that makes it so potent? And why, for centuries, have people believed that something other lurks in the longest shadows of the year? To understand why the winter solstice has such a reputation for the strange and supernatural, we need to look back, way back. The solstice has been celebrated for thousands of years across almost every corner of the globe. From the ancient Druids gathering at Stonehenge to the Norse lighting Yule fires, the solstice wasn't just another cold night on the calendar. It was sacred. It marked the death of darkness and the slow return of the sun, a promise that no matter how long the night feels, dawn is always coming. But as inspiring as that sounds, let's be honest, our ancestors weren't lighting fires and feasting just for the hallmark vibes. They believed the solstice wasn't just about the sun. It was about the thinning veil, that invisible barrier between our world and, well, everything else. Spirits, gods, demons, cryptids. If it could go bump in the night, the winter solstice was basically its open house. Take the Celtic Druids, for example. They believed that on this night the natural order loosened and the other world, a place of spirits and mystical beings, became accessible. This wasn't just folklore for them, it was reality. They performed elaborate rituals to honor the gods, appease restless spirits, and protect themselves from malevolent forces. Then there's the Norse tradition of Yule. Odin, the Allfather himself, was said to lead a ghostly procession across the night sky called the Wild Hunt. This wasn't your friendly neighborhood Christmas parade. It was a terrifying spectacle of spirits, gods and creatures swooping through the heavens, searching for souls to claim. Hear the howling wind during the solstice? According to the Norse, that wasn't just weather. It might have been the wild hunt passing overhead. Even the Romans got in on the action with Saturnalia, a festival honoring Saturn, the god of agriculture and time. It was a time of chaos, role reversals, and revelry. But underneath all the partying, there was an unspoken acknowledgement of the solstice's power, its ability to disrupt the normal order of things. Now here's where things get really interesting. In virtually every culture, the solstice isn't just a time of celebration, it's a time of danger. People believe that this was when malevolent forces were at their strongest, slipping through the cracks of reality. Think of it as the supernatural version of Black Friday. Everything that goes bump in the night is out hunting for a deal. And honestly, who can blame them? If I were a spirit or cryptid, I'd be all over the solstice too. The longest night of the year, when people are already on edge and the air feels electric, it's the perfect cover for some shadowy shenanigans. But what does that mean for us in modern times? Have these energies faded with our electric lights and smartphones, or are we just better at ignoring them? Because let me tell you, when my daughter and her friend came running out of those woods on solstice night, they weren't spooked by a YouTube algorithm. They felt something primal, something our ancestors would have recognized instantly. So are these ancient stories just dusty old myths, or are they warning signs we've chosen to ignore? Let's keep digging, because the deeper we go, the stranger it gets. Up next, we're diving into the phenomenon of mimicry. Why do entities imitate us? Is it a trick, a trap, or something more sinister? All right, let's talk about mimicry, one of the creepiest phenomena tied to the paranormal. It's one thing to hear weird noises in the woods, but it's a whole other level of terrifying when those noises start to sound like you. Or worse, someone you know. This is exactly what my daughter and her friend experienced on solstice night. As they were walking through our neighborhood, which has forested green areas and paths running through it, something out there started mimicking them, repeating their laughter, their words, even the cadence of their voices. Now, this wasn't an echo. They're not walking in the Grand Canyon. This is upstate New York. Something or someone was deliberately copying them. So, what's going on here? Why do these entities mimic us? Well, there are a few theories, and none of them are the warm and fuzzy kind. Let's start with the cryptozoological angle. Some researchers suggest that mimicry is a survival tactic for certain cryptids, like Bigfoot or skinwalkers. By imitating human voices, they can lure people deeper into the woods, away from safety. It's a predatory behavior, like a spider spinning a web or a wolf howling to its pack. The mimicry isn't just creepy, it's strategic. Now, if you want to go even darker, and let's face it, we're here for the weird stuff, there's the spiritual perspective. Many cultures believe that mimicry is a hallmark of malevolent entities, like demons or trickster spirits. These beings can't create. They can only imitate. By copying human voices, they're not just luring you in, they're mocking you, asserting their dominance over the natural order. It's like they're saying, look, I can sound like you, but you can't sound like me. Guess who's in charge here? Then there's the psychological theory, which tries to put a rational spin on things. Some scientists argue that what we interpret as supernatural mimicry could actually be auditory pareidolia, our brains misinterpreting random sounds as voices. Now, I'll admit, that's a plausible explanation when you're sitting in a cozy office. But when you're out in the woods, hearing your own voice coming from the darkness, auditory pareidolia doesn't exactly feel like the right answer. And let's not forget about technology. With the rise of deepfake audio and advanced voice replication, some people suggest that mimicry could have a more earthly explanation. Maybe it's not a cryptid or a spirit at all. Maybe it's someone or something using advanced tech to mess with us. Could governments or private organizations be testing some kind of surveillance or psychological warfare tech? If you're rolling your eyes, just remember, conspiracy theories often sound crazy until they're not. So what does this mean for my daughter and her friend? Was their experience a cryptid laying a trap, a malevolent spirit playing games, or something entirely new? Honestly, I don't know. But what I do know is this. Mimicry is never innocent. It's always intentional, always calculated, and whether it's coming from the natural world, the supernatural realm, or some shadowy lab, it's something we need to take seriously. Now here's the kicker. Mimicry isn't just a modern phenomenon. It's been documented for centuries, from Native American legends of skinwalkers to European stories of fae folk. And if you think this is just a campfire story, stick around. In the next segment, we're exploring the biblical connections to mimicry and how it ties into spiritual warfare. Because believe me, the Bible has a lot to say about deception and imitation. If you want to understand mimicry on a deeper level, you've got to crack open the Bible. And no, I'm not talking about flipping to the genealogy sections, although those can be surprisingly fascinating in their own way. I'm talking about the parts of Scripture that deal with deception, imitation, and spiritual warfare. Because mimicry isn't just spooky, it's a weapon. Let's start with one of the biggest mimics of all time, Satan. In 2 Corinthians 11:14, Paul writes, "And no wonder, for Satan himself masquerades as an angel of light." Think about that for a second. Satan doesn't show up with horns and a pitchfork. He shows up looking like the good guy. He's the ultimate imitator, taking something holy and twisting it just enough to deceive. And it's not just Satan. The Bible is full of warnings about false prophets and deceptive spirits. In Matthew 24:24, Jesus himself says, "For false Christs and false prophets will appear and perform great signs and wonders to deceive, if possible, even the elect." That's not just a casual heads up, that's a full-blown alert. Deception is part of the spiritual battlefield, and mimicry is one of its most effective tools. Now, let's tie this back to the concept of voices in the woods. In 1 John 4:1, we're told, "Dear friends, do not believe every spirit, but test the spirits to see whether they are from God, because many false prophets have gone out into the world." In other words, not everything that sounds familiar or comforting is what it seems. If you hear a voice that sounds like a loved one, or even yourself, you'd better test it. Because if it's coming from the darkness, chances are it's not there to lead you to safety. Here's another biblical connection, the idea of mimicry as mockery. Remember in the book of Job when Satan challenges God by imitating Job's devotion? Satan essentially says, "Job only worships you because his life is great. Take it all away and he'll curse you." Satan wasn't just imitating Job's faith, he was mocking it, trying to undermine the very foundation of Job's relationship with God. This idea of imitation as mockery shows up in modern encounters too. People who experience mimicry often describe a sense of being ridiculed or taunted. It's not just a voice calling out from the woods. It's a voice that feels wrong, like it's trying to get under your skin. And if we take the biblical perspective, that's exactly what malevolent forces aim to do: undermine, distract, and ultimately destroy. But here's the good news. The Bible doesn't leave us defenseless. In Ephesians, der 6:10b-18, Paul lays out the armor of God, a spiritual toolkit for standing firm against the schemes of the devil: truth, righteousness, faith, salvation, the Word of God. These aren't just abstract concepts. They're weapons in a war where deception is the enemy's primary tactic. Now, I know what you're thinking. Bennett, that's all well and good. But what does this mean for us today? Great question. It means we need to stay spiritually sharp. Mimicry, whether it's coming from the woods or your Instagram feed, is designed to distract and deceive. And the best defense? Discernment. That's the ability to see through the facade and recognize the truth, no matter how convincing the imitation might be. So, when my daughter and her friend heard those mimicking voices on solstice night, it wasn't just a creepy experience. It was a reminder that the battle between light and darkness is very real, and it doesn't take the night off just because we've got smartphones and streetlights. All right, we've unpacked the ancient and biblical perspectives on mimicry, but there's more to this story. Up next, we're diving into the woods themselves. Why are forests such a hot spot for the unexplained? And what is it about these places that make them feel alive? Let's talk about the woods, their beauty, their mystery, and their undeniable knack for creeping us out. There's a reason every good horror movie has a scene set in the forest. Something about the dense trees, the shifting shadows, and the utter stillness just screams liminal space. A liminal space, for those of you unfamiliar with the term, is a place that exists between worlds. It's not quite here, not quite there. Sort of like your in-laws' guest bedroom during the holidays. Forests are the ultimate liminal space, and throughout history they've been viewed as gateways to the unknown. Think about it. In mythology and folklore, the woods are always a place of transformation or danger. Hansel and Gretel, lost in the woods. Little Red Riding Hood, stalked by a wolf. Even in more modern stories, the forest represents the unknown, the place where normal rules don't apply. But why? Why are forests so universally associated with the strange and supernatural? Let's start with the practical. Forests are naturally disorienting. The trees block out the sun, dampen sound, and create an environment where even the most seasoned outdoorsman can feel vulnerable. Add to that the fact that wildlife, like birds and coyotes, can mimic sounds, including human voices, and you've got a recipe for confusion and fear. Now, let's get weird. Many cultures believe that forests are alive, not just biologically, but spiritually. The Celts believed in dryads, tree spirits that could guide or harm travelers depending on their mood. Native American tribes often describe the woods as sacred spaces filled with spirits that must be respected or avoided. Even in Christianity, the wilderness is a place of testing and revelation. Think of Jesus fasting in the desert or Moses encountering the burning bush. And then there are the cryptids. Bigfoot, the Dogmen, the Wendigo. Forests are their stomping grounds, and it's not hard to see why. The dense foliage provides cover, the isolation limits witnesses, and the natural acoustics make every sound more haunting. If you were a creature trying to avoid detection, where better to hide than a forest? But here's where it gets even stranger. Forests don't just seem alive. They might actually be communicating. Scientists have discovered that trees use underground fungal networks to share nutrients and information, a phenomenon sometimes called the wood wide web. And if trees are communicating on a physical level, Is it really such a leap to think they might be conduits for something more? That brings us back to my daughter's solstice experience. The woods where she heard the mimicry aren't just any woods. They're part of a region with a long history of strange sightings. Lights in the sky, unexplained sounds, even the occasional Sasquatch report. And if you think that's just coincidence, let me remind you, in the paranormal world, there are no coincidences. Forests are thresholds. They exist on the edge of the human world and the natural world, and maybe even other worlds we don't fully understand. And when you add a night like the winter solstice, a time when the veil is already thin, you've got the perfect storm for the unexplained. So, what's the takeaway? First, respect the woods. They're beautiful, yes, but they're also unpredictable, mysterious, and maybe even aware. Second, don't ignore your instincts. If the forest feels alive, it probably is, and not just in the way your high school biology teacher described. All right, we've covered the physical and spiritual aspects of the woods, but there's one more layer to this story. In our final section, we're zooming out and asking a bigger question. How do these strange experiences, solstice nights, mimicry thresholds, impact us as individuals and as a society? All right, we've walked through ancient lore, biblical warnings, and the strange, almost sentient energy of the woods. But here's the big question. Why does any of this matter? What do these unexplained experiences, like my daughter's encounter on solstice night, actually mean for us? First, let's talk about the personal impact. If you've ever had an encounter with something unexplained, you know it changes you. It forces you to confront questions most people would rather avoid. What's real? What's out there? Am I as safe as I thought I was? For some, it's a wake-up call to the spiritual battle raging around us. For others, it's a descent into doubt, paranoia, or even fear. For my daughter and her friend, their experience was unsettling but also eye-opening. It made them more aware, more cautious, and maybe even more curious. And that's the paradox of the unexplained. It's terrifying, but it also sparks a hunger for understanding. It's like the universe dropped a puzzle piece in your lap and said, good luck finding the rest. But the personal impact doesn't stop there. Experiences like these often have a ripple effect. You tell your family, your friends, maybe even a podcast host like me, and suddenly the story spreads. It becomes part of a larger narrative, a thread in the tapestry of human curiosity and mystery. Now, let's zoom out to the societal level. What do these stories do to us as a culture? Well, for one, they keep us humble. In a world dominated by science, technology, and the illusion of control, the unexplained reminds us that there's still so much we don't know, and that's a good thing. It pushes us to ask questions, to explore, to stay curious. But there's another side to this coin. The unexplained can also divide us. Some people embrace these stories, seeing them as proof of a spiritual realm or a hidden reality. Others dismiss them outright, labeling believers as gullible or delusional. This divide isn't just about belief, it's about worldview. Are you someone who's open to mystery, or do you cling to the safety of what's known? And then there's the question of control. Throughout history, governments and institutions have tried to suppress or explain away the unexplained. Why? Because mystery is dangerous. It challenges authority, disrupts the status quo, and makes people harder to manipulate. Think about UFO sightings and the years of denial from official channels. When people start asking questions about one mystery, they often start questioning everything else. That's where the real impact lies. The unexplained isn't just a curiosity, it's a catalyst. It shakes us out of complacency and forces us to look deeper, not just at the world around us, but at ourselves. It challenges our assumptions, our beliefs, and sometimes even our faith. So what do we do with that? How do we process the unexplained without losing ourselves in it? First, stay grounded. Remember that not every rustle in the woods is Bigfoot, and not every shadow is a demon. But at the same time, don't close yourself off. Be open to mystery, but approach it with discernment. Second, share your stories. Whether you've seen lights in the sky, heard voices in the woods, or felt a presence you couldn't explain, your experience matters. It's a piece of the puzzle, and you never know who might have the next piece. And finally, remember that the unexplained isn't something to fear, it's something to explore. It's a reminder that the world is bigger, stranger, and more interconnected than we often realize. And in a society that loves to act like it's got everything figured out, that's a message we desperately need. All right, we've covered a lot of ground today. From ancient solstice traditions to mimicry, from spiritual warfare to the living energy of the woods, and finally to the impact of these mysteries on our lives and culture. But before we wrap up, let's tie it all together with some closing thoughts. And there you have it, folks. A dive into the mysteries of the winter solstice, mimicry, the strange energy of the woods, and what it all means for us as individuals and as a society. If nothing else, I hope this episode got you thinking, maybe even questioning, because at the end of the day, that's what Broadcasting Seeds is all about. Planting ideas, encouraging curiosity, and reminding you that the world is a lot bigger, stranger, and more connected than we often realize. Now, I know some of you might be itching to share your own stories. Maybe you've heard a voice in the woods, seen something you can't explain, or experienced one of those moments where reality feels just a little off. If that's you, I want to hear about it. Reach out to me and let's keep this conversation going. If you enjoyed today's episode, or if it freaked you out just enough to keep the lights on tonight, do me a favor. Hit that like button, share this episode with someone who loves a good mystery, and leave a review. Your support helps us grow, reach more people, and keep uncovering the stories that make you question everything. All right, my friends, until next time, stay curious, stay grounded, and maybe think twice before walking into the woods alone, especially on the longest night of the year. This is Bennett Tanton, signing off. Stay safe and keep broadcasting those seeds.
I got bad thoughts that make my mind scared, hold me hostage and they don't fight fair. Who gon' pray for me and wipe all my tears? Who gon' save me if you not right here? Move this darkness and make my sight clear. Take me your way cause I don't like here. Ghosts of my past, they filling the night air. Wake me up, I'm trapped in my nightmares. Wake me up, I'm trapped in my nightmares. Drowning, I'm off the deep end. Apparitions of all my demons. All my thoughts are committing treason. All alone, who gon' hear me screaming? Manifestations of my fears. Regrets that stretched out for light years. Can almost touch the light, homie, it's right there. Body free but trapped in my nightmares. Wake me up, don't let me drown. All the lights are fading now. All my life is fading now. All my life is fading now. Wake me up, don't let me drown. All my life is fading now. All my life is fading now. Body free but trapped in my nightmares. Wake me up, I'm trapped in my nightmares.
Solstice.